I, as Foreign Minister, actually signed the application for NATO after 200 years of successful military non-alliance because of Russia's war in Ukraine. The Russian invasion was a breach of so many things. It was a breach of international law. It was attacking a friendly country that has not provoked Russia in any way. There is actually laws in war, and they have breached all those laws. I think that Ukraine definitely should be both member of EU and member of NATO. Well, first let me say that the red lines are not for the West to decide. The red lines is purely up to Ukraine. The Americans should ask for a fair deal, not for a deal that is positive only to Russia. And it should be Ukraine who decide what a fair deal is.
Hi everyone, my name is Linde and this is United 24 Media. Before I announce our new guest, I would like to kindly ask you to not forget to hit a subscribe button. It will help us share our news from Ukraine with the world. And if you like this video, hit a like button and write something in the comments. Our guest today is Ann Linde, Swedish former Minister of Foreign Affairs in the years 2019 to 2022. She's been advocating for helping Ukraine both with military aid, humanitarian. Also, she is the person who played a key role in getting Sweden to NATO. So hi, Ann. It's so nice to see you. Thanks a lot for taking the time and being with us here today. And welcome.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
So first question I would like to ask is that Sweden has been a great supporter for Ukraine. It's Sweden's support has been strong and consistent. To what degree do you think Sweden has impacted Ukrainian defense effort?
Well, I think Sweden has played a pivotal role in bolstering Ukraine's defense and capabilities and also resilience to our substantial military aid and also the support from the people in Sweden. We have supported military aid with roughly, you can say, 6.2 billion euros or dollars, depending what you like, since the Russian full-scale invasion when I was foreign minister in February 2022. There is also a signed agreement on civilian and contingency support between Sweden and Ukraine, and that agreement is concentrating on issues like hybrid threats, about services, supply chain, all that more civilian things that you really need in a war. So I can say that because Ukraine's security is a top priority for Sweden's own security and our regional stability, this has strengthened Ukraine's defense, but it has also strengthened the situation in Sweden.
Why, in your opinion, is it number one priority for Sweden to support Ukraine? How do you guys understand it, if I may ask?
Well, this is, the Russian invasion was a breach of so many things. It was a breach of international law. It was attacking a friendly country that has not provoked Russia in any way. And also the way that Russia has conducted a war on civilians, with murders, with rape, with tortures, going after civilian houses. There is actually laws in war, and they have breached all those laws. So this, of course, was a terrible, terrible thing for other countries, both in Europe, but like Sweden is in the vicinity of Russia. So that meant that I, as foreign minister, actually signed the application for NATO after 200 years of successful military non-alliance because of Russia's war in Ukraine.
How do you see now the role in NATO and the future for NATO, given all the uncertainty with the US? Do you think NATO will be kept as a NATO, or should Europe opt for creating something new?
Well, I'm very, very sure that to keeping NATO is the most important thing. I don't believe at all in our own European army. But I think that all European countries need to rearm, and all countries must meet the target for at least 2%, and that has to be even more later on. But NATO has built up, the whole capabilities, strategic capabilities that will take. If we were to leave NATO and depend on like an EU army, not only would it take many, many years to build up the capabilities, but it also, of course, will be difficult for countries that is not member of EU, like Canada, like UK, many other countries, to be part of it. I also think that the European leg in the NATO has to be strengthened. And that is something that has to be discussed because unfortunately we cannot 100% rely on how US will react in an Article 5 situation when it comes to military support. And the President of the United States has several times said that he will not support countries that is not paying and so on and so forth, leaving an uncertainty among NATO members. And I just saw a new poll that came just 2-3 days ago from a big institute in France, who said that it's a majority of Europeans who are no longer sure that United States will come to a military defend them if there would be a military conflict on our territory.
Do you believe that Sweden in particular and Europe are doing enough to support and strengthen Ukraine, and what more can be done?
What you can see is that countries close to Ukraine, like the Baltic states, like the Nordic states, like Germany, are doing a lot. But not all European states has the same, maybe willingness to support military. There is a great agreement among all European countries except for Hungary that are members of EU to continue with sanctions. But I think that we could do more. Of course, Sweden being one of those countries who is contributing the most, you can always do more. But I think it's more important to get more countries to do more.
And looking ahead, what role do you see for Europe in helping Ukraine build a sustainable modern defense system, even if war continues? And can Europe offer credible security guarantees to go beyond military aid?
When it comes to support, I think it's one important thing is to help Ukraine build up their own manufacturing of military equipment. So support factories, military industries, also to give education on how to use different kind of military equipment in the most important way. For example, Air Force, when you see, it's coming. And also, of course, I think to grant EU membership is essential. That will be difficult. We know NATO membership might even be more difficult because the United States has already said that they're not in favor of it. But that's this administration, and we should see it long term. And long term, I think that Ukraine definitely should be both member of EU and member of NATO.
Beyond military aid, Sweden has helped our Ukrainian refugees greatly. So how was the society response to that?
Well, that is something that I think is so very encouraging, that the Swedish society and the NGO civil society and the NGO community is so well engaged in Ukraine. Like, let me take a few examples. Every Monday and every Wednesday, since the very first week, there are meetings in two different squares. One square is beside the Russian embassy, and it's called the Free Ukraine Place. That's the official name. They changed the name of that park just after the invasion. And every Wednesday we stand there. I've been there many times and talk, and it always ends with everybody turn around their faces to the Russian embassy and shouting, "Stop the war now," 10 times. And every Monday is in the very midst of Stockholm with people coming, I think, and speeches. I've also been there several times. And I think that reminding people about what's going on in Ukraine now in the fourth year is very important, because you need the will of the people to be able to use taxpayers' money to pay for support to Ukraine. So I think those things is important. Then you have all over Sweden local projects where they collect what's needed in Ukraine civil for civil peoples, and then they drive down with trucks and so on and so forth. Right today, I'm in the steering committee of one very interesting project. It's education for women to be bus drivers and truck drivers. So last year, 700 women were educated to be truck drivers and bus drivers. It's called Reskilling Ukraine. And I know that, I mean, it's less than 10 years, I think 2017, that women were not even allowed to become truck drivers. And now we have these projects, and so it's both, of course, good for women and for the society. So this is well, it's one example, and I've also been visiting several NGOs who have, for example, meetings with Ukraine women and children who now live in Sweden. It's not easy to leave your country, know that your country is in war, adjust in a new society. So it's not easy. So I'm very happy that there are organizations like women organizations who try to make the lives easier for Ukrainians living in Sweden.
That sounds truly wonderful, and I'm personally grateful to your people for doing that. Thanks. Let's move on. Given all these attempts to have negotiations, US, Ukraine, Russia, from your perspective and experience as Foreign Minister and OSCE Chair, what dangers are of premature peace talks, and what red lines must the West never cross?
Well, first, let me say that the red lines are not for the West to decide. The red lines is purely up to Ukraine. It's Ukraine who has to decide where are the red lines. But having said that, I think that it's absolutely unacceptable that a country can, by violence, take territory from another country and claim that that territory belongs to them. And also to decide what security way a country should do. So if a country should be neutral, non-aligned, member of NATO, I mean, all those different, it should not be another country who decides that. And I think it's very, very worrying that even before any peace talk has started, the United States has already given away some of the most important issues, like no membership of NATO, like yesterday when their negotiator Witkoff was saying that he believed Putin when he says that Ukraine was not a full country, but so that's why it wouldn't be so difficult to be accepting that Russia were given these territories. And I think that's it's terrible. And then I have to say also, when it comes to the peace talks, that I really, really hope that when Ukraine decides to take part in the peace talks or negotiation, they also have women in the negotiation team. Because we know that if women are in the negotiation teams and signed peace agreements, there is 20% bigger chance that it sustains for 2 years, and it's 35% bigger chance that it sustains for 15 years. And this is very, very well researched. One of the reasons is that women has other points in society to keep the agreement. This should be, of course, also for the Russian side. And we also know that if women are not in the negotiating team, issues like sexual related violence, like rapes, are not taken up for accountability. We could see this when it was the Balkan Wars in the beginning of the 90s, that there were mass rapes, but it was not taken up as part of the accountability. And it still wounds 30 years later, because women did not get a real accountability from the perpetrators. And it's deep wounds that take decades and decades to change. So women in both teams is absolutely necessary. I really hope that women and maybe others also in Ukraine is going to demand this.
Thanks, very insightful. It was very interesting. Actually, you meant accountability for war crimes. Now with the US pulling out of the International Criminal Court, how will it impact all the investigation processes about the war crimes in Ukraine?
Well, I think that whatever happens, whomever is in the International Criminal Court, you have to do very extensive research and put it on the table. I know that, for example, from day one, Swedish prosecutors starting to interview women who came to Sweden about what they have experienced, to get their witnesses, because it could be very difficult several years after. And I know also that there are organizations doing this in Ukraine. But as I said, also in my country, this is going on, because there should always be accountability. And then, of course, if someone is not accepting the verdict or whatever, it will always be there. And you know that it could take many years before a perpetrator is prosecuted with a verdict. But in the end, it could and should happen.
Do you think that Europe is doing enough in terms of diplomatic, economic isolation of Russia? I mean, sanctions. We've seen some sanction packages, but it seems that it takes a lot of time. It takes so long to impose them. So what is the reason for that? And is there more to be done?
As I said before, there's always more to be done. But I was minister for the first year of the invasion, when I think I was there for 6 or 7 sanction packages. And that is a very difficult process. Now it's 16 or 17, 16 has been taken. It should be 17.
June, yeah.
And all those processes has to be taken unanimously. So all 27 members of EU has to agree. And the process is that you put up people and products and everything on lists. And then all the countries get to see the list and could have views on the list. And every time that has been done, mostly Hungary has said that we don't agree with this, we don't agree with that. You should take away those person, you should take away those products. So it's a very difficult process, because when you have a sanction, it is it's not just a word, it has a great impact. For example, freezing the possibility to bank accounts and traveling and everything for individuals, or forbidding to selling or exporting or, for that matter, importing products. And it's getting more and more difficult because it is unanimous, all 27 countries. And that's also why I think it's so important to keep this issue of what's going on in Ukraine live. I mean, to let journalists go there, to inspire NGOs and civil society in other countries than Ukraine to understand that it's still a full-scale war. Ukraine people is suffering. They are being under enormous stress. And as a journalist, they call it before the CNN focus, that if there is a war who doesn't have the attention of people, it's very difficult also to get support. So I think that is one of the main issues, to keep the information going. People have to understand that the full-scale war is going on. Ukrainian people are suffering every single day.
We've seen a great wave and cultural exchange between Sweden and Ukraine, museums, movies, festivals, and so on. So why is cultural diplomacy so crucial in the times of war?
Well, it is very, very important because culture keeps a society together. And with culture, you touches people's hearts and minds. And you don't get engagement if you don't have culture. And that's why you can also see now what's happening in many European countries. You have extreme rights parties that get much higher support. And they always claim that it's our culture in our nation who is the only important thing, creating by that way polarization between different groups. And that's very dangerous. And I think, for example, there is always a trying to have a narrative about what is a culture, what is a country. And there is now, for example, a narrative from Putin that unfortunately many in the United States have said that Ukraine was never a state, Ukraine doesn't have their own culture, and so on and so forth. And in Sweden, there is a very interesting exhibition now. It's called Crossroads, Sweden and Ukraine Through 1,000 Years at the Army Museum. And when you go into that museum, the first thing you see is a big family tree. And that family tree starts in 1019. 1019. And then 2 years later, I think it was 1 or 2 years later, there was the Swedish princess who was then Ingegerd Olofsdotter. She was to the king, Olof Skötkonung, that all Swedes know. She married the Yaroslav of Kiev, the Prince of Kiev. That was, more than 1,000 years ago, where Sweden and Ukraine started to have relation. And then it's, for example, the first written constitution for Ukraine. You can see it in the exhibition, and it's also all different kinds of relation. The last box in the museum is actually the pen that I used to sign the NATO application with, because it said that if it wasn't for the attack on Ukraine, Sweden would have changed our security policy. So it shows beyond all doubts that Ukraine has a long, long history, and that history is connected to the Swedish history.
Do you see opportunities for deeper cultural partnerships between Sweden and Ukraine, not just as a soft power, but maybe as a way to preserve and protect Ukrainian identity, which is under threat and which is Russia tried to destroy, basically.
Yes, definitely. And I think it's what is key here is both all those Ukrainian refugees in Sweden who is making, a great contribution to our country, both culturally, but also in other ways. And all those, NGOs now all over the country who does small projects. I mean, it is important with a 6.2 billion in military aid, but I think it's for a long term. It's also very important with those people who has engaged and using their free time to support local villages and parts of Ukraine to keep up that contribution. And many people in Sweden has got so much more knowledge about Ukraine and the country and the culture and so on because of this. That is, of course, that is positive, but it's the terrible thing is, of course, the invasion. So I don't say that this is good because of the war. That's not what I say. But I say that it could be a positive consequences of all the engagement.
If you were to have a message for people who watch this, we have a huge American audience and European as well. So what would be your message?
The message is to don't give up, continue to support Ukraine, military, politically, humanitarian aid. The war is not over. Push for, if you're an American citizen, that United States should ask for a fair deal. The Americans should ask for a fair deal, not for a deal that is positive only to Russia. And it should be Ukraine who decide what a fair deal is.
And thanks so much for this talk. I loved it. Thanks for your support, for your position, and hopefully sometimes in the future we will speak again.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава. Thank you. Bye. Have a good day, Ann.